in that blood-stained home. Two watched it happen, but left them alone. BK's the patsy in their crooked frame job, while Moscow PD fudges facts, bunch of dirty slobs. DM saw a killer 3 feet in the hall, heard whimpers and crying through the thin bedroom wall, but she locked her door tighter as the footsteps passed by. While 4 friends lay dying, ask yourself why. 8 hours silent, too long, while heartbeats ran cold. That's not just trauma, that's a story they sold. 8 hours too late, why wait? What were they hiding that night? 8 hours too late, conspiracy covered in morning light. Did they scrub the crime scene? Scrub it, coordinate lines. 8 hours too late, while the FBI framed an innocent man. Why wait for sunrise? Why call friends first? Tell me why. Unconscious person that rehearsed lines the worst. Were they destroying evidence, washing blood down the drain? Insane. Texting the real killer, the cops are a train. ISP altered body cam footage with shame. Shame on you. FBI pressured witnesses to play their game. Play the game. That party house reputation, secrets they'd keep, while Brian's the sacrifice, so the guilty sleep. 8 hours silent, calculated, while alibis said, set in stone. That's not just shock, that's a debt to be met. 8 hours too late, what were they hiding that night? 8 hours too late, conspiracy covered in morning light. Did they scrub the crime scene? Scrub it, coordinate lines. 8 hours too late, while the FBI framed an innocent man. 3 agencies weaving their tapestry fake, while roommates were buying time for evidence to break. Did the killer pay them off? Were they holding the stash? 8 hours of silence while the blue lights flash.
Blood on their hands, a serpent's breath.
Good late afternoon, everybody, my beautiful crime family. Let me get rid of this. Don't need that. And yeah, there we are. Oh, one other thing. I'm getting there. Got family here that just came in. I was told last night they were going to be here till around 7, but they're here now. So, so if you hear noise back there and all that kind of stuff, that's what's going on. Anyway, Labor Day weekend. I can't believe this summer has gone by this fast. Oh, it's still summer anyway, but it's, you know, it's on its way out. Whatever. But yeah, today is going to be different because I did a production on a video, and we're going to be talking about, you know, how Here, let me say hi to my crime family here first. Leo, good to see you. Elizabeth, good to see you. Debbie Gazzardo, my girl, good to see you. Amy Conway, good to see you. Joey, good to see you. Leah Story, my girl, good to see you. Delby Rush, my brother, good to see you. Crime Spy, good to see you. Joe P, good to see you. Hope Norris, good to see you. Mrs. Johnny Nat, good to see you. Karen Jolie, good to see you. Unpopular opinion 1111, good to see you. And I keep scrolling up here. Transformer Uplifter, good to see you. Tippy Hadrum, Collander, good to see you. And everybody out there chatting and non-chatters alike, welcome to Once Upon a Crime Time. I'm your host, Tommy Jude, and today we're going to be getting into Snow Leopard, A-Ray, Gianna. Oh, Gianna, good to see you. I've seen you for a while. Snow Leopard, good to see you. Anyway, so we're going to be getting into this. You know, we've been talking quite a bit about the infiltration of cartels into the universities and how they're getting into the fraternities and into the sororities. I don't know why other channels haven't picked up on this, because it's kind of huge. Some people won't even talk about the frats or the sororities, and they really need to be looked into, because the cartels nowadays work differently than they did. And they are in the United States. So it's more than ever, more than ever. And they're infiltrating military, law enforcement agencies. I mean, money talks, people. Money fucking talks in this country. And you know, someone offers them nice little stash, you know what I'm saying? They're going to do it. So, and that's what this show is going to be about, is not just that the military and the law enforcement and the state patrols and the FBI's are being infiltrated with money. And that's what we're going to get into, and how it parallels to this case. And I think you're going to see a lot of parallels, and we'll talk about that after. Well, maybe during, I might stop this production and talk about it a little bit, because I just think of like parallels of the investigation and what went on there and what went on with some of these things that are going on, like at Fort Bragg. And Fort Bragg is concentrated on here. And, but it's not just happening at Fort Bragg. That's the thing. And it's a scary world we're living in today, when you have infiltration of even politicians and to the FBI and to you know, the military, and I mean that's scary stuff. So anyway, that's what we're going to look at today, and I'm going to run this video, and I might interrupt here and there in the video, just to say some things and whatever. And hey, Grant and Lisa, Shelly, Yuri. So anyway, let me present this here. Okay, until that's ready, and here we go.
Mark Lesher Carr was exactly what Fort Bragg intended him to be, a respected Green Beret who was comfortable operating in the shadows. He had been deployed on multiple missions to Afghanistan and Tajikistan. To his friends and fellow soldiers, he was steady and disciplined. He had survived war zones and raids, which is why everyone was shocked when he turned up dead on US soil. Leshakar's story would become a dark prelude, a warning that tragically went unheard until it was far too late. Born in 1984, Leshakar joined the Green Berets in 2012. After several deployments, he struggled with sleep. He became withdrawn and anxious. Like many at Bragg, he was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury sustained by surviving an IED. He began relying on medications to privately cope with the pain, and soon they weren't enough, so he turned to other substances to cope, isolating himself further in the process. However, it would all come crashing violently into view in March 2018. Mark Leshakar joined his close friend, Delta Force operator, Master Sergeant Billy Levine II, on a family trip to Disney World, and on the drive back home to Fayetteville, North Carolina, Leshakar began to exhibit increasingly paranoid behavior. He became convinced someone was eavesdropping on their conversations, insisted that the car was bugged, and people were following them. When they arrived home, he began systematically dismantling parts of the vehicle in the driveway before the engine even cooled off. He was looking for listening devices and trackers. This led to a fight between the two men, a wrestling match in the driveway before Levine gathered the children and moved them inside the house. He locked the door before Leshakar could follow, but one of the children heard him calling, and she let him inside. According to Levine, Leshakar entered aggressively, wielding a screwdriver, prompting Levine to respond instinctively in self-defense. Leshakar's daughter described what happened next. He started walking towards Uncle Billy, and Uncle Billy started shooting him, and I looked, and it was like he was dancing, and he fell down on the ground, and Uncle Billy kept shooting him. And when he looked up, I could see he wasn't there anymore. Al know it involved two Fort Bragg soldiers. Police have identified the man who died as 33-year-old Mark Leshakar. The shooting officials quickly accepted Levine's story that Leshakar had approached him with a screwdriver. They ruled that the shooting was justified, yet the official story didn't hold. No screwdriver was recovered from the scene. Witness testimony from the daughters conflicted with Levine's account of an aggressive attack. Lastly, Leshakar was shot multiple times with at least one gunshot entering his body from behind. These raised serious questions about what happened that afternoon. Leshakar's death cracked open a door that many within the military had spent years trying to keep shut. It forced into daylight a question no one wanted to ask. What happens when the men we train to keep secrets begin to keep their own? This was only the beginning. Whatever had been building inside Levine, the shooting didn't start it. It just let it out. In the weeks that followed, something in him began to slip. He grew restless, erratic. He was unraveling in fragments. He wasn't falling apart. He was coming undone. Levine had served multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan as a member of the Army's secretive Delta Force. He was experienced, effective, and lethal. Levine failed multiple drug tests. Some soldiers said he was even cooking drugs in his quarters. Others said he was selling it. Either way, command saw the same thing: a war hero, decaying. Instead of discharge, they opted for discretion. Levine was quietly pulled from Delta Force. No headlines, no investigation. In September 2018, he was indicted on charges of harboring a fugitive and running a drug operation out of his home. Oddly, these charges were later dropped. In 2019, he struck up partnerships with men like Freddie Huff, a former state trooper turned drug kingpin, and Timothy Dumas, who was a property accounting technician and warrant officer at Fort Bragg. On December 2, 2020, a hunter exploring a remote corner of Fort Bragg stumbled onto a scene that defied explanation. A gray Chevy Colorado pickup stranded in the mud, its engine cold. Nearby, two bodies. One was Timothy Dumas, the other was Billy Levine. Levine was found curled in the fetal position, wearing only boxer shorts and wrapped in a poncho in the bed of the pickup. He had multiple gunshots to the torso. Dumas was found 30 feet away from the truck, lying face down with multiple gunshot wounds. He was wearing civilian clothes and bore a small puncture wound near the right temple, consistent with a small caliber handgun. Investigators quickly noticed that no firearms were found at the scene, a stark indication that a third person had executed them and vanished without a trace. A professional hit carried out with chilling precision. But why were these two men in an isolated training area after dark? The deeper investigators probed, the more unsettling the answers became. The deaths of Mark Leshakar, Billy Levine, and Timothy Dumas formed a pattern that was only beginning to emerge. These deaths were unmistakably connected, but it seemed like something was cutting these threads. Each time a lead began to surface, it was severed cleanly, but there would be no shortage. Between 2020 and 2021, Fort Bragg lost at least 109 soldiers. Between 2020 and 2024, 24 soldiers were murdered. Some deaths made headlines. Most didn't. Each one felt like another thread pruned away. Every time a story began to take shape, it unraveled, and there was something underneath the network of deaths and disappearances, and whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen. In May 2020, specialist Enrique Roman Martinez, a 21-year-old paratrooper, set off on a camping trip over Memorial Day weekend with 7 soldiers. They targeted a remote area of North Carolina's Outer Banks. Martinez, described by peers as reliable and easygoing, was looking forward to a brief escape from the pressures of military life. Late on May 22, 2020, as heavy rain fell and the ocean roared, Martinez vanished from the isolated campsite without his phone, wallet, or possessions. A bizarre detail investigators would find particularly troubling. For more than vague assurances, 3 of the soldiers faced minor charges for lying to investigators and drug use. Within months, other bizarre fatalities began stacking up at Fort Bragg, each case amplifying suspicions and deepening the mystery. In November 2020, specialist Terrence Salazar, a young, seemingly healthy soldier, was found dead in his barracks under circumstances investigators labeled as undetermined. No clear cause of death was ever publicly revealed. Just 2 months later, in January 2021, 32-year-old Captain Robert Latham, a highly fit and respected officer, suddenly collapsed and died from what authorities vaguely called an apparent heart attack. No prior medical issues had been reported. Colleagues remained baffled. On October 27, 2021, 38-year-old Sergeant Calvin Rockworth collapsed during a routine morning workout and never got up. Fort Bragg officials would only say a sudden, unexpected medical event took his life. No further explanation was given. In June 2021, another horrifying incident occurred. Specialist Joshua Diamond and Matthew Disney were both found dead simultaneously inside their shared barracks room, victims of suspected overdoses. The double death sent shockwaves through the base. Investigators initially promised transparency, yet details about their deaths quickly faded behind bureaucratic silence. At first, these deaths seemed unrelated: an overdose, heart attack, a collapse during training, all tragic but explainable. That's how pressure moves when it's deep enough. Individually, they looked like accidents, but over time, something began to change. The way bodies were found without cause, the way stories changed, the way files disappeared. What united these cases wasn't the manner of death, it was the silence that followed. The longer you looked, the more it began to feel like the connections had been hidden, a careful and deliberate erosion by the kind of force that doesn't announce itself. Something larger, something that understands how to stay quiet by keeping pieces scattered.
you're going to start seeing parallels with this now, and how they operate and how things remain shushed and quiet, and how that parallels to this case. Now, here's what I forgot to tell you. Did you know that there's 21 military bases between Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Idaho? There's 21 military bases or installations. That's a lot of military out there. And just think of this. Think about it. And then you think, one thing I want you to think about too with this. How does Kopaka fit in? How does Kopaka fit in? And why was he living in a college student apartment building, hanging around with kids and shit? And it makes you wonder, what's really going on. Let's keep it going. But how to say, look at this, by keeping pieces scattered, and how to stay quiet. Does that sound familiar? By keeping pieces scattered and staying quiet. Oh, man. Huh? Yeah, let's keep listening.
By making sure the full shape is never in view. Because once you start to see it, you can't unsee it. It's exactly what Fort Bragg was built to conceal. Fractures begin at Fort Bragg. The violence, the overdoses, the disappearances, they weren't scattered accidents. They radiated outward from something deeper, something hidden, a force that didn't just kill, it spread. It was a system, a network that operated in shadow, quiet and protected by the very institutions designed to contain it. It thrived not in chaos, but in structure. It adapted, it learned, and over time, investigators began to glimpse it, just enough to define the edges of something dark, Arkleshikar, where unofficial statements outlined an argument with Levine on the day of his death about missing cash and a quantity of white powder. From there, the thread unraveled. Levine had moved forward, connected with Dumas and Huff, a former North Carolina state trooper turned Las Zetas operative. He had become the cartel's East Coast distributor. Huff operated a sham appliance export business that hauled used refrigerators and stoves to Mexico and brought back loads of narcotics hidden inside, fooling border agents and canines. By 2016, he was moving an estimated 50 to 100 kilos of product a week across North Carolina and beyond, distributing as far as Atlanta. His protection came from ex-cops, ex-soldiers, and active-duty insiders at Fort Bragg. The pipeline of narcotics flowed from the Zetas to Fort Bragg, but Huff expanded it, building a network to smuggle Afghan opiates using military infrastructure. Huff had a purported blackmail file where he listed the soldiers who trafficked out of Afghanistan, exploiting military supply flights returning from the war zone. This has not yet been.
Okay, think about this for a second. You have all this hush, hush, quiet, quiet, keep everything gagged so we don't know what's going on. And then how is this even possible in the court systems today of what happened in the Coberger case? How in the fuck is this even happening? Then you look at things like this, and then you think of oh my God, there's 21 air bases. I mean, not air bases, but military bases in 4 states, including Idaho. And in that whole area. And did they build connections? Have they built connections? And when the Afghan war ended, what'd they do to keep making money then? Where was their product that they were smuggling across from Afghan? The cartels right here in town, right in that area. I've proven that to you. I've proven that to you. Pav's proven it to you. Many of us have proven that the cartel is right in that area. And like I said in my very first video with the Rory, this is a drug hub. This is a hub. This is a hub, a trafficking hub. And now do they have warehouses in that area that they're actually putting these chemicals together and making these pills and the meth and anything else that they can traffic. Anything else that they can traffic to make money. As you heard in Fort Bragg, the police were paid. They were paid off. This was a big money operation. Let's keep going.
Corroborated in court, but it does align with other patterns. Once stateside, the narcotics were distributed via Levine and Dumas. Then their bodies were discovered in 2020, but still the distribution continued. What began as thrill-seeking and self-medication among troops metastasized into organized profiteering. There were even whispers of an LSD cult operating among special forces. No official information was ever released, and while the army remained silent, the bodies began to pile up. Young, healthy soldiers were found dead in barracks and cars. Most deaths were ruled accidental. Some weren't ruled at all. No statements, no answers, just silence. And yet the trafficking continued. The profits were immense. Hoff reinvested into protection, paying canine officers for tips on how to avoid detection. Some of the money was funneled into real estate and luxury goods around Fayetteville. Other portions flowed directly back to cartel hands. He began relying on medications to privately cope with the pain.
Yeah.
Nothing to suggest what was coming.
I don't know where this was here. Oh, right in here somewhere. Okay. Yeah.
Cars.
Anyway,
most deaths were ruled accidental.
Yeah, we'll start from there. But now what was I going to say? Oh, man. But doesn't this sound very familiar of what really is going on out there in the Washington, Idaho whole area? It's something like that. And remember this. Remember this. National security interest. National security interest. Let's keep going.
Some weren't ruled at all. No statements, no answers, just silence. And yet the trafficking continued. The profits were immense. Hoff reinvested into protection, paying canine officers for tips on how to avoid detection. Some of the money was funneled into real estate and luxury goods around Fayetteville. Other portions flowed directly back to cartel hands. In one 2021 raid, authorities found nearly $100,000 in cash, alongside 2 kilograms of powder at the home of Master Sergeant Martin Acevedo. When Acevedo was arrested, the Army kept his service status quiet. The initial press release did not even mention he was active duty. That silence was telling. The striking feature of the Fort Bragg cartel was how insulated it appeared to be. They were trained in it. Their military credentials and combat experience became armor. Huff's alliance with special forces meant he wasn't just protected, he had killers on his side. In 2021, Huff was arrested after impersonating law enforcement to rob a rival stash house. In his vehicle, officers found over $7 million in narcotics. He was eventually convicted, but not before Fort Bragg's name appeared repeatedly in DEA testimony, asset seizures, and witness interviews. Then in August 2023, federal prosecutors unsealed an indictment in the Levine Dumas double homicide. The alleged triggerman was a civilian, Kenneth Quick Jr., but the moment the lid cracked open, more names began to surface. In 2021 alone, 15 soldiers were detained in connection to trafficking investigations, and yet without public disclosure or disciplinary action, they were quietly released back to duty. This was no longer about addiction, it was about control. Before the Army could admit it had a problem, it buried the bodies and scrubbed the records. Before the public could learn the truth, the investigations were quietly closed. But Fort Bragg's problems didn't start in the barracks or in the training grounds. They started earlier, when the violence wasn't hidden. It spilled into neighborhoods, into living rooms, into families. It began on June 11, 2002, when Sergeant Rigoberto Nieves shot his wife and then himself. To those who knew him, Sergeant Nieves was the ideal soldier. Born in 1971, Nieves was 31 years old when his life came to a violent end. He served as a Green Beret, and he had been deployed overseas since March 2002, serving in some of the harshest and most isolated conditions imaginable. He formally requested early leave to return home, citing a pressing need to address mounting personal issues. Nieves returned not as a soldier relieved from combat duties, but seemingly burdened by something deeper and darker. Friends and family immediately noticed that the usually composed and quiet Green Beret seemed different, withdrawn, restless. On June 11th, relatives in the basement of their home on Stony Point Road overheard their intense and ongoing arguments. The family stayed downstairs, scared to intervene. Whatever was unraveling above them, it didn't feel like something they could stop. Around 8:30 p.m., 2 sudden gunshots shattered the uneasy silence of the house. Alarmed relatives rushed upstairs to find the door locked from the inside. Calls to both of them went unanswered, and panic rapidly escalated. Family members tried to force the bedroom door but were unsuccessful. Fearing the worst, they called the Fayetteville police around 10 p.m. Responding officers forced entry into the master bedroom. Inside, 28-year-old Teresa lay lifeless on the bathroom floor, killed by a single gunshot wound. Rigoberto was found dead nearby on the bedroom floor, his Glock 40 caliber pistol beside him. Within 24 hours, authorities publicly speculated that marital conflict had been the trigger. Toxicology reports found no drugs or alcohol in their systems, only deepening the mystery. But for those who knew them, that explanation rang hollow. Relatives, friends, and fellow soldiers described Nieves as calm and devoted to his family. There was no history of domestic violence, no legal trouble, no restraining order, nothing to suggest what was coming. It seemed senseless. A man unmade, their young daughter suddenly orphaned. But as the weeks wore on and more murders followed, it became clear this wasn't just a tragedy. It was the start of something much worse. On June 29, 2002, a warm North Carolina summer night, Neighbors on Willowbrook Drive, just west of Fort Bragg's southern training area, heard the muffled sounds of an argument. Within hours, Jennifer Wright, a 34-year-old military spouse and mother of 3, had vanished without a trace. Her husband, Master Sergeant Bill Wright, told police that his wife had left their home to visit friends, but she never returned. Nearly 3 weeks passed.
I got
It was only when
hamburgers
investigators
and
began
brats.
pressing Wright more forcefully that his story crumbled. The horrific truth emerged in a chilling confession. Wright described strangling his wife during a heated argument in their master bedroom. The fight, he said, had spiraled out of control, driven by arguments over finances, frustration at his frequent deployments, and her talk of separation. Wright admitted that he had killed her with his own hands. In an effort to cover up his crime, he had placed her body inside a large Rubbermaid container, hiding it initially inside their home, allowing it to remain undetected as law enforcement repeatedly questioned him. After 20 days, Wright finally transported the container with her body to an isolated stretch of Fort Bragg's training grounds near Plank Road, digging a shallow grave beneath the pines and quietly burying her remains. Authorities immediately found the burial site, exhuming her partially decomposed body later that same day. On August 23, 2002, Wright died in his jail cell, unable to face justice for his crimes. He left behind no note, only haunting questions for investigators, his children, and her grieving relatives. But friends and soldiers from Wright's unit remembered him as a calm and steady professional, known for reliability and competence. Deployed to Afghanistan from late 2001 until March 2002, Wright had operated under conditions of intense stress, isolation, and prolonged exertion. Upon returning home, his unit observed troubling changes. Wright appeared exhausted, plagued by insomnia and episodes of irritability. It would only be weeks later when another shocking crime unfolded near Fort Bragg. The deadly summer was far from over. On July 9, 2002, flames tore through the quiet night in Ray Circle, a modest community of rented trailers in Cumberland County, North Carolina, just 4 miles south of Fort Bragg. At around 1:50 a.m., Cumberland County firefighters arrived, extinguishing the blaze quickly, but uncovering a far darker scene inside. In the charred remains of the trailer's master bedroom, firefighters discovered the body of 32-year-old Marilyn Laverne Griffin. The room smelled strongly of gasoline, and investigators determined the fire had been intentionally set to conceal a far more violent crime. Marilyn Griffin had been stabbed approximately 50 times with a knife. Even more chillingly, Marilyn was not alone in the home at the time of the attack. Her 2 daughters, aged 6 and 2, were asleep inside when their mother was violently attacked and murdered. Miraculously, both girls managed to escape, running terrified and barefoot to seek refuge with neighbors. By dawn, detectives had identified their prime suspect, Marilyn's estranged husband, 28-year-old Sergeant Cedric Ramon Griffin, an active duty soldier at Fort Bragg. Griffin was taken into custody on the same day of the murder. He was charged with first-degree murder, first-degree arson, and 2 counts of attempted murder. In March 2005, on the very first day of his capital murder trial, he pleaded guilty to all charges. In exchange for his plea, Griffin was sentenced to life in prison without parole, narrowly avoiding the death penalty. He was subsequently incarcerated at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina, where he remains today. The summer of violence at Fort Bragg reached its crescendo on July 19, 2002, in a quiet home on Autry Mill Road in Stedman, North Carolina, 10 miles east of Fort Bragg. Sergeant Brandon Floyd, a 30-year-old Ohio native known for his distinguished military career, had recently returned from a classified deployment in Afghanistan. Floyd served in Delta Force, and his professional life was marked by extraordinary competence, bravery, and resilience under pressure. Yet at home, his personal life had begun coming apart. On the afternoon of Friday, July 19th, neighbors near the Floyd family residence reported hearing a heated argument coming from inside the home. Friends later revealed to authorities that Andrea Floyd, the 29-year-old spouse, had recently asked for a divorce, marking a breaking point that appeared too difficult to endure. At approximately 4:30 p.m. that day, neighbors heard the unmistakable sound of multiple gunshots and immediately dialed 911. Cumberland County deputies arrived swiftly, entering the home to find a horrific scene. Andrea lay lifeless in the master bedroom with a fatal gunshot wound. Nearby, Floyd was discovered dead, the firearm nearby. Although this brought a conclusion to the terror of dead wife summer, something about these killings felt off. The violence, the uniformity. The Army launched an internal investigation. A 19-member epidemiological team dispatched to Fort Bragg in August 2002. Their mission was to identify whether the base was dealing with a pattern or a coincidence. They called it Epicon, and one of the first variables they looked at was pharmaceutical exposure. 3 of the 4 soldiers, Nieves, Wright, and Floyd, had recently returned from deployments to Afghanistan, and all 3 had been prescribed the same drug, mefloquine, also known by its brand name, Lariam. It was standard issue at the time, an anti-malarial handed out to troops operating in high-risk areas, just 1 pill a week to prevent the disease. But Lariam came with a cost. Reports going back years had linked it to severe side effects, paranoia, insomnia, hallucinations, aggression. The Epicon report, released in November 2002, acknowledged Lariam's risk profile. It listed psychosis and aggression as possible side effects. Still, the Army concluded that Lariam was unlikely to have been a causal factor. Instead, the deaths were attributed to marital discord and personal stressors. There's a particular kind of silence that follows violence, like a reminder that the rules we believed in no longer apply. It's a quiet that settles while the world itself is reshaped, while we try to find some meaning or purpose when there is none. It's haunting how quickly institutions tried to convince that these men were simply broken, that they were made this way, or they were fractured from stress and time. Something poisonous was leaching from Fort Bragg, whether the pills or policies. Something inside the system had cracked in the summer of 2002, and it continued to spill for decades. Dead Wife Summer was another beginning in a long line of haunting beginnings. Treated trauma and criminal conspiracy, pipelining drugs beneath a command culture shrouded in silence. These issues might have seemed like isolated failures, tragic but unconnected. The pills in the bloodstream, the bodies in the barracks, the bloodshed in bedrooms. But there was more, always more. Above ground, young soldiers were dying in their barracks of overdoses, unexplained collapses, or sudden violence, while below them, toxic chemicals percolated beneath the training grounds and airfields. PFAs, or forever chemicals, had leached into the soil and groundwater, originally used in firefighting foam and industrial solvents. These compounds do not break down. They persist, they accumulate in soil, in water, in blood. Recent testing found levels on base were far above the EPA's safety threshold. The risks weren't theoretical. Cancer, endocrine disruption, and immune dysfunction. By 2024, the Army confirmed that plumes of PFAs were migrating off post into nearby neighborhoods, prompting emergency well testing and bottled water advisories. The most likely source was the decades of firefighting foam used at Pope and Simmons Army airfields. But PFAs aren't just carcinogens, they're neurotoxins. Prolonged exposure has been linked to mood disorders, memory impairment, aggression, and altered brain chemistry.
makes you wonder. It makes me wonder about. Here's where it makes me wonder of like Kopaka or something like that. Let's see. And I'm not just saying that. I'm saying multiple things here, and you have to look at it because it's layered. It's layered, everyone. It's layered. There, you have cartels that are infiltrating the military and law enforcement and FBI and so forth. This video may get shut down. I don't know. It might. Anyway, then you have a man like Kopaka, and I hate to go there, but you know, was he at a base that had a lot of this shit, and was he fucked up in the head, not just from PTSD, but chemicals and stuff? I mean, they're talking about aggression. What, you know, if he's part of this, we don't know. We don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying these are facts. Everything in this video and in all my videos are speculation and opinions. So, but let's keep going. It's almost over here.
It's chilling to consider these soldiers were poisoned from below and poisoned from within. When you trace the full pattern, it looks less like chaos and more like a system of layered exposure. First, they were issued pills like Larium, medications with known risks of psychosis, hallucinations, and violent impulse. These were official, prescribed, and documented. Then, they're immersed in an environment saturated with unseen toxins, inhaled, ingested, and absorbed over time. It was a landscape of slow decay. And finally, in the absence of care, these soldiers turned to narcotics to quiet the noise in their heads. Drugs handed out by the scans, drugs absorbed from the earth, and drugs chosen by desperation. And it's not without precedent. The U.S. Army has a well-documented history of experimenting on its own. Countless psychotropics and experimental pharmaceuticals were introduced at places like Edgewood Arsenal. Some were told they were testing equipment. Others weren't told anything at all. Those who refused were threatened, and those who complied suffered. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's history. So when soldiers report hallucinations during the Depression, when they begin dying to unprecedented numbers, the institutions remain private. The question must be asked, are they walking in haunted corridor that was built long ago? One paved with chemicals, insulated with silence, and locked from the inside. Over the past 2 decades, demand for mental health care Fort Bragg has tripled, but the number of providers has declined to nearly 30%. That shortage translates to wait lists for a surgery crisis, even a 3-day delay for treatment. And the difference between surviving the moment or not. The Army is short of psychiatrists and psychologists nationwide. Fort Bragg is underhoused. When care isn't accessible, soldiers turn elsewhere. Alcohol, opioids, and stimulants. The culture doesn't help, and never really. The Senate is not in your career. Ask for counseling, and you risk losing slots at high-profile schools or admissions, so the pain gets buried and bottled up. The deaths, the disappearances, the cover-ups, they don't trace back to a single conspirator. They outline a system that is running from within, a closed loop of failure, toxic exposure, psychotropic drugs, soldiers flush between chemical assault and bureaucratic neglect. In 2023, Fort Bragg was rebranded as Fort Bragg. The Army said it was part of a broader initiative to remove Confederate names from military installations. For those who have followed the deaths, the timing felt too perfect, as if a rebrand could erase what this place had become. A coat of paint doesn't fix a crumbling foundation. The churn of the system built to never look directly at what it creates. A military that asks a
And there we go. Yeah. So they're infiltrating these bases. I mean, that's very tempting for people. I mean, they're not making that much money. And they have wives at home. They have kids at home. And I'm not talking like privates here. I'm talking people in the up. And they keep things, they know, like I said in the video, they know how to keep things quiet. And there's a lot of parallels to the Coberger case and this. And is it, we talked about, people being scared in that town and scared to even come back and testify, things like that. And you have to wonder why they're scared. Well, could it be that the fucking cartel is right there and they're controlled and they're semi-controlled by the military? And are they involved? Is law enforcement involved? And that's the questions we need to ask. And that's what I'm saying. I think it's going on throughout the whole United States. Law enforcement's I think the cartel is everywhere. And was there something on with the Coberger case and the cartels? I showed you the picture of Forsberg, Jonah Chapin, and Eva Miller, and the Mexican dude standing behind Kaylee and Maddie when they were ordering at the grub truck. Gage Forsberg, was driving a, what was it called? It's a green color by Ford, and it came out in 2022. And that's what Gage Forsberg was driving. And it looks black, but it isn't black. It's a little off color. And if you remember, I think I remember this in one of Enon's interviews, that he stated it was black, but it was a little off color. Two days later, Forsberg gets pulled over in this thing, and Jonah Chapin gets busted for $20,000 in a backpack. Guns, knives, money, and rugs. And the Mexican dude was there. I'm not going to say his name. I said it. I showed it, and that's all I'm going to do. That was on a previous video. But they were all standing behind Kaylee and Maddie. And then you have Jonah Chapin looking into that camera, staring it down. And again, I'll show you that picture of him. It's right at my fingertips here. So, right there. Staring right into the camera. There he is. So you got that. And then, so why are they scared? Is it scared because they know, these kids know, because the cartels have infiltrated and I wish people that don't want to mention the fraternities would look at them, because these cartels are infiltrating the fraternities and the sororities, and then law enforcement and military and politicians. I would be fucking scared too. Then people wonder why they're all moving away and they don't even want to go back to Moscow. some leaving the country. Then you wonder about the court and how it's handled with Schittler. Thank you, WB. God, that was funny. Still makes me laugh. You know, and how far up and how many, you know, some are good and some are bad. They need to be weeded out. And I think that that needs to be done to stop the trafficking of all kinds. That's for sure. Anyway, so that was the production, and it's going to be a busy weekend here. I have family here, and I had my I had my mic on when I said I got burgers and brought stuff barbecue up. So I want you guys all to have a great Labor Day weekend. Enjoy your family if they're coming. It's a big last hurrah here for the summer. So yeah, we're gonna enjoy it. And I get to drive my son's Corvette. So yeah, and my new computer is gonna be. It'll probably be all hooked up by the time I come on next. So I'm hoping to have a whole different studio. It's going to take time to get everything that I want, but I do have enough for this computer, which is a kick-ass computer. Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited for the weekend, and I want you all to have a great weekend, and I want to thank every single one of you. Again, I want to wish you a happy Labor Day. And to my subs, I love you all very much. And to my mods and my producers and my investigators, you are the best there is. And I love you all very much. And until next time, rock and roll. How would you like it? How would you like it? How would you like this? How would you like to walk into a bar, just a regular club, having a charity, and in walks Joey Bonamassa, Richie Sambora, and Orianti? How would you like that? Would you like that? I think I would. Let's just see, shall we? Rock and roll, everybody.
Yeah, you want the, I
enjoy it,
whatever you guys want to sing.
Right now,
You gonna eat now?
Yeah, I'm gonna eat now.
Okay, we'll take some. All right. want the
I was born in a crossfire hurricane, and I cried, Mama, in the falling rain. But it's alright, back this again. It's alright, jumping jack flash, it's a yes, yes, yes. I was raised by a toothless bearded hag. I was schooled with a strap right across my back. But it's all back us again. It's all right. Jumping jack flash, it's a yes, yes, yes. Yeah, all right. once again. It's alright. Jumper Jack Flash is again.